this is what you're really here for. It's our storytelling time, and we call this segment, What Happened When? So, hey, Bruce, what happened when Dusty came to the WWF? It's 1989, I believe. Something has happened in Atlanta. Dusty's on the outs, and now Dusty's looking for a job. Somehow he winds up in New York, and everybody online, myself included, has always been led to believe this is one monumental rib. What's the story? What happened when Dusty came to New York?
Well, him coming to New York was definitely not a rib. I mean, Dusty coming in, when you go way back, all right, and you talk about when Vince first started his expansion, pre-Hulk Hogan, when Vince has this idea of what he wants to do, and he wants to have this mega superstar, this mega champion, this mega draw. Before Hulk Hogan, that guy was Dusty Rhodes. And they had brought Dusty into Madison Square Garden. He worked a few garden shots, did very well, worked with Superstar, did some different things. They even brought him into the Hit Factory, which was the It recording studio in New York City, and had him cut a couple tunes and things like that.
And you're saying this is Vince Jr., not Senior.
Yeah, well, there is no Vince Jr.
You
this
know what
Vincent
I mean.
Kennedy McMahon, yes.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, so...
Junior.
The reason...
Terry Funk would say, Prichard, did Junior send you in here?
I like it.
I guess I should silence my phone, too, huh?
No, that's Terry Funk calling right there. He's not retired. He'll never retire. So here's my question about that. In my head, Vincent Kennedy McMahon has always been a body guy. How the hell was he infatuated with Dusty back then?
Well, Vince was an attraction guy too. While he's a body guy and he was a bodybuilder himself, he was an attraction guy. And you take a look at Dusty Rhodes and what Dusty had done in Florida, and everywhere that Dusty went, he drew money. And that's what Vince was looking for. He was looking for that guy. And in comparison to Hogan, frankly, at the time, was probably more attractive because he had been all over the country already,
right,
and he'd headlined all over the country. So when Dusty came up, they were going to do the whole thing, and I think at the time, Dusty's ego was maybe not quite in check so much that Dream saw himself even bigger than Vince saw him, and the deal kind of fell through. And then, of course, Rocky III happened. Hulk Hogan's on the scene, and the rest is history.
So you're saying this would have been like 83?
It was early, yeah, 82, 83.
So at the time, Dusty's probably based out of Florida and probably helping book the territory. Am I wrong on that?
Yeah, I want to say Dusty was in Florida or Atlanta, and he was in the South, and he was a dream, man. Dusty drew big money all over the country. You could bring Dusty into Texas, brought Dusty into Florida, the Mid-Atlantic, St. Louis, wherever Dusty went, he normally worked on top and drew money. So that was attractive to Vince, and he drew money in the Garden. So he was a proven commodity.
So Vince Sr. really liked to book, I don't know, ethnicities. I'm trying to find the right way to say that. He had someone for the Italians. He had someone for the Puerto Ricans. He had someone for the Irish. Who the hell was Dusty catering to?
The common man, if you will, baby. The
gosh.
American dream. Dusty appealed to everybody.
Right.
Because, he didn't have the bodybuilder body physique. He appealed to that common guy who's sitting there drinking a beer going, you know what, I could kick his ass. And Dusty allowed them to live vicariously through the American dream. So that was something that Vince saw in him way back when in the early 80s. So you fast forward to 1989 when Dusty came in. And Dusty coming in, he was coming in as the American Dream, which at the time, if you remember, we didn't really use guys' gimmicks that they used previously. Vince had to change everybody and make them his own, but he let Dusty use his name and the gimmick.
So when you're saying he came in, do you know how that comes about? Did he call Vince? Did Vince call him? I'm sure, word gets around. It goes through the wrestling grapevine, and people are aware in New York that he has an issue in Atlanta. But how does that come about? Do you recall?
I'm pretty sure Dusty called Vince and wanted to know, is there any interest in me coming in and doing some business. And the answer was, of course, yes.
Okay.
Who wouldn't want him? So he came in as Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream. And again, Vince having to put his twist on things is where, the common man and being that everyday guy. And that's where we came up with the vignettes of, is he all American, Americana pizza man, and Americana plumbing, and let me wash that windshield for you, and Americana butcher, and all those different vignettes that we did with him at the time to just make him that common man that everybody could relate to.
So I assume he comes to Stamford, comes to the office, comes to the tower. You guys sit down, and Vince says, okay, I want to make you a plumber. Is that the pitch?
No, not really. Actually, he sent me down to Tampa to meet with Dusty along with Bobby Heenan and explain the whole idea. And Vince had talked to Dusty ahead of time and kind of explained the idea in grandiose terms.
Right.
But when Bobby and I went down to meet with Dusty, we met him in the old Florida Championship Wrestling offices.
Oh, wow.
And we went in. I explained to him the vignettes that we had and what we were going to shoot over the next couple of days. We did the pizza one. We did the plumber man. And I think we did a total of 3 in Tampa, and then we did the rest of them up in Connecticut. But we laid it out, and it was an interesting meeting. Let me put it that way. It was Dream was kind of looking at us like he used to do, kind of out of the side of his eyeball, if you will. And I think Dusty might have thought it was a rib.
Can we run a timeout right now and just talk about how crazy it must have been to sit across from a guy who holds himself in such high regard? And you do too. You grew up being a super fan. I know sometimes, some of our listeners, myself included, when I was first introduced to Dusty Rhodes, he was rocking the polka dots. That's who I knew. I never got to see Dusty Rhodes in his prime as the NWA World Champion, selling out Madison Square Garden. I didn't get to see any of that stuff. I never saw the Hard Times promo as a kid. Now, of course, later as a tape trader, as I grew up, that was different. I'm saying my first impression of Dusty, when I see him on TV as a kid, it's the polka dot WWF version. And I can't imagine sitting down to that guy, a guy who Ric Flair used to look up to and wanted to pattern his career after. And now you're going to tell him, yeah, we're going to have you working at a taco shop, and you're going to be a plumber, and you're going to work a pizza shop, and you're going to be a garbage man. And it's all coming when Bruce Prichard is in the room. Like, can you imagine what Dusty must have thought? I mean, at the time, how old could Bruce have been? Mid to late 20s. It's pretty unbelievable. And it's fun to go back and hear those first impressions. I think the first one he did there was Terry Funk. You get to hear that Dusty impression. And it does make me wonder, just as a hypothetical, I'm big on what ifs. What if Rocky III didn't happen and Hogan didn't leave? Would Vince have maybe gone with Dusty instead? We've sort of freestyled that with Bruce in the past. What could that have looked like? Maybe that first WrestleMania when he wants to go into national expansion. Would he have tried to lure away Dusty because Dusty had been a proven draw and had all this charisma? And you can see in the old promos that Vince, quote unquote, Jr. had a soft spot for Dusty. But man, Dusty and Mr. T, can you imagine? You also hear we've got our first t-shirt commercial. We just had 3 shirts at the time. Of course, later we'd become t-shirt whores, and anything we said on the show could be turned into a shirt. And even to this day, we're still getting suggestions for stuff we say on the show. Hey, can that be a shirt? When can that be a shirt? But yeah, it's fun to go back and hear something to wrestle in the context of it being our very first episode. Let's get going. Let's get back to the show. It's Dusty Rhodes and the WWF.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.